Hey guys, John here. I got a quick announcement alert for people in the VC and audiophiles, especially music lovers, really for anybody, but especially audiophiles. And then I'm going to talk about the very first punk rock album. And the announcement or not really an announcement, but an alert that two cats, veterans of the VC, are back making content, and that's Paul Madam Sin and Garner Born Out of Time, have both started putting content up, and they're fantastic channels because their music is well curated, like the best of rock and roll, blues, and the subgenres, and sometimes reggae. But you're going to get some really good garage rock, punk rock, rockabilly, mod, freak beat, whatever. It's always great stuff. And for the audiophiles, they only play audiophile records, the 45 RPM stuff. None of those 33 1/3 low sound quality, no 16 RPM, none of the bad sounding stuff. Only the best will be 45 and 78 too, which I'm also going to mention Matthias, Mean Mojo, DJ Mean Mojo, Matthias. Also, he's always been making content, but I'm going to leave a link there. He just plays the record and lets you listen to it. There's no talking or anything, but he also plays the best of the best stuff. You just drool over. Audiophiles will be like, oh my God, this is fantastic. But those cats are back and leaving links, and you can check it out. And before we go on to the first punk rock album, I got the honor of seeing John Cooper Clarke, and I got to meet him, and I bought his book, and I'm going to read a little bit of poetry, a book of poems. And this is a poem called The Man Who Didn't Love Elvis. A sad sack sitting in a sickly groove. The band kicked off, he couldn't move. What was he trying to prove? The man who didn't love Elvis. He didn't seem to have a heart. He was a man apart. I had him pegged right from the start. The man who didn't love Elvis. The man who didn't love Elvis is not as other men, condemned to miss the point, time and time plus time again. From which benighted neighborhood, whose golden dream is the color of mud? And what does he have instead of blood? The man who didn't love Elvis. When all his opinions fade to gray, 6 feet under the frozen clay, we will forget what he had to say. The man who didn't love Elvis. John Cooper Clarke. But anyway, I'm going to go on to the very first punk rock album. And I'm not saying it, I can't think of an earlier one than this. So there's certainly punk rock songs you could go on. And now let's talk about the definition of punk rock. I'm going with the modern day definition. I actually disagree with this definition. Like anything that's dangerous or cool or wild or anti-establishment, they say, that's punk rock, man. Jerry Lee Lewis, he's punk rock. And I say, no, Jerry Lee Lewis is rock and roll. And if you do something outrageous, dangerous, you got an attitude, you're cool, you're anti-establishment, that's rock and roll. And it's like, that's not punk rock, it's rock and roll, baby. And punk is after, and when you do something cool, you're in a punk rock band, but you're doing something rock and roll again. The reason we say it's punk is because of all the lame rock and roll that happened in the 70s that made it necessary for punk to happen, to bring back original rock and roll. But anyway, I don't know if you got that, what I'm trying to explain. But either way, I'm going to go with the modern definition of punk. This is punk. But the very first punk rock record, album, not record, because there's singles, there's punk all the time. But the first punk rock album is Got Live If You Want It by the Rolling Stones. And this record is amazingly dangerous, arrogant, and just noisy, and just really anti-establishment as you could get. And it's basically a full album of punk rock. And sure, we know the Stones, this and that, and they're punk, they're rock, they're rebellious, whatever. But this is actually punk rock record that'll hold up next to the Circle Jerks or Black Flag, or pick any of your punk albums. And the thing is, you got to get the mono version. The stereo version is panned. Mick and the crowd are panned to one side, the band's over here, and it's pretty lousy. It's pretty lousy. And this probably is the greatest, I'm not saying the greatest record, but this is the best mono record makes it compared to its stereo counterpart. There's a lot of, like, you could argue about Sgt. Pepper's, you like mono, you like stereo, but they're both on par with each other. It's now a matter of opinion. But this, you go absolutely killer to crap. So it's the biggest difference you're going to see between a mono and a stereo if you're going to compare. And it also goes to the rule, like people say, oh, should I get the mono, should I get the stereo? This is 1966. My rule is anything before 1967, get mono. Anything after 67, get stereo. I'm sure there's exceptions. It's a general rule of thumb. And anything in 67, you're going to, pick or choose on an individual basis, or you get both or whatever. But 67's the year where it was crossing over and there's some important mono, stereo, or whatnot. But anyway, let's go over this record. This record, basically every song, and you had people bragging, like in the blues and arrogance, like Bo Diddley or Muddy Waters, bragging's always been around. There's all this stuff, but basically every song on this album is either bitching about something, taunting someone, or bragging about themselves. And it's almost brilliant going through it. What an amazing, like, punk rock attitude, rock and roll attitude. This is not the Beatles. This isn't the Kinks. This isn't Elvis. This isn't anything. This is just snotty rock and roll at its finest. And I don't know if it's even ever been topped from the Rolling Stones, the snottiness. But we got Under My Thumb. I'll call that a bragging song. I got you under my thumb. Get Off My Cloud. That's kind of I guess that would be a taunting song or an angry song. I don't know. Hey, you, get off of my cloud. We got Lady Jane on here. We're going to skip that because that's lousy. And as most LPs have bad songs on them. Bands put their best songs on singles, put their worst songs on LPs. And Lady Jane, we'll call that their worst song. Studio version's great, but on here, unnecessary. Then they do a Buddy Holly cover, Not Fade Away. And I'm going to call that, I guess we'll call that a taunting, bragging song. I'm going to tell you how it's going to be. You're going to give your love to me. How it's gonna be, and you're gonna give your love to me. That love will last more than one day. When love is love and I'll fade away. When love is love and I'll fade away. I said love and I'll fade away. Then they got two covers, which were contemporary covers, which were actually recorded in the studio. Otis Redding, I've Been Loving You Too Long, and then Fortune Teller, which I forget the cat who did that, but became kind of like a garage rock staple. But those are studio tracks with the fake crowd. And the reason they have those is because this was recorded live at Royal Albert Hall, which was supposed to be their big welcome home gig after the American tour, and they were going to welcome home to England gig. And they were going to record the live album, but after two songs, the crowd jumped the stage, grabbed Mick Jagger, and just kind of destroyed the gig. And someone said, I read a quote somewhere that said, the Rolling Stones don't play concerts, they play riots. So anyway, so you only have two songs from the Royal Albert Hall. The rest they had to get from different shows, and they added those two studio ones. But off to side two, we got the Last Time, I Told You Once and I Told You Twice. You never listened to my advice. Maybe the last time, I don't know. Then you got 19th Nervous Breakdown, a taunting song, making fun of the rich girl. And when he says 19th nervous breakdown, he's not talking about like Eddie Cochran, I'm having a nervous breakdown, like in like this abstract kind of way. He's literally saying you're going to have a mental breakdown. And he's really taunting her. Another great bragging sign. Time is on my side. You'll come running back, you know. Then we got a Bo Diddley cover, I'm All Right, which is another bragging song. Then we got Have You Seen Your Mother, Baby, Standing in the Shadow. And I don't know what that is, but it sounds kind of taunting. I never quite understood what that song was all about, the decline and this. But either way, it's snotty punk. And of course, we end up with the best bitchin' song of all time is I Can't Get No Satisfaction. Complain about the man on TV, saying you can't be a man if you don't smoke the same cigarette as me. I can't get no satisfaction. I try. That's where snottiness punk rock started. All the garage rock bands copied that. That's the prototype of basically anti-establishment, screw the man. But I love this whole making fun of upper class, just everything. It's just on here, and it's just noisy as heck. And you get the spirit of the band, and I think the band doesn't even like this. This wasn't on the mono box set, and this is the best mono record they put out. And you don't hear this one it brought up, got live if you want it. And I love this. I even love this photo. And if you look at this photo, it almost encapsulates the Stones. You got, and try to picture just try to picture them in any other order. It won't work. But you got Mick and Keith there, physically holding down Brian Jones. You got Bill Wyman here, stone alone, kind of just being ignored, sitting on the floor. And you got Charlie, who's definitely like the wingman to Mick and Keith. He's with them, but he's too cool. He's like, I'm getting a chair and I'm sitting over here. But I love this photo because you could never have this photo, just picture, it would never work with like Brian and Keith up here holding down Mick, or holding down Bill and then Mick sitting really small in like the ignored place. Or you couldn't have Keith in the chair and then Brian and Mick up here. You can't do any other combo but this. And I know it's just a photographer. They weren't trying to read anything into it. But this really captures the Stones. So I just love this photo. And this is pretty cool too. And if you notice, this is how they did it. This is the stereo version. it was just basically one sheet was printed, and if it was stereo, they'd lower it, cut out the mono thing, and the pictures are lower, the words are lower. And if it was mono, they would just lower it. I mean, they would raise it, bring the mono up, take the stereo, fold it over, and then that's the top. So they only needed one sheet back then, so it's on the fold over. You know, it'll say stereo under here, and on the stereo one, it'll say mono underneath where you can't see. But pretty cool. I love that. And let's show the label. And it's on Red London. And this record can be had for anywhere from like $5 to $20. You could get yourself a really nice copy. I doubt this record ever sold for over $50 ever. Maybe a sealed copy or an autographed copy. And they each have their original London inner sleeves, which I dig. Both of them have the same one too, so they were definitely around the same year. So pretty cool. But anyway, you could get the very first punk rock record for, I'd say, a clean copy, probably around $20. But you don't even need it clean. It's mono. You click your mono switch or mono cart, however you do it. All that noise, you know, it cuts down 50% and goes to the center. So it sounds great. Noise isn't going to mess this up because this is a sloppy ass record. And listen to some of these songs, I almost hear like Satisfaction almost reminds me of New York hardcore. Instead of having that single string fuzz riff, like if that was chords and you actually just listen to it, it sounds like a New York hardcore band, but absolutely punk rock. And that's about it. So I hope you check out Madam Sin and Garner and Matthias's channels. You're going to love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. All audiophile. And that's about it, guys. Cheers.